Cardano seems to be just one step closer to achieving one of its biggest upgrades ever in its history. And of course, I'm talking about the Van Rossum hard fork because there were some recent statistics that were indicating that we're very well one step closer to seeing that massive upgrade, which is apparently going to bring a lot of amazing benefits in regard to security and as well as improvements when it comes to Cardano. So I'll talk about that in today's video. I'll explain the significance of it, and I'll discuss the price of ADA, which is Cardano's native token, later on. But I first want to address this and clarify that nothing I say is financial advice, and I am not telling anyone to do anything. So something called Intersect recently made a post about the Van Rossum hard fork. They made an update, basically. They said 89% block production on node version 11, and also 80.21% exchange readiness by liquidity. Now, these are all just random statistics, which basically quite simply indicates that we're one step closer to seeing the Van Rossum hard fork. However, this is not a 100% set thing for sure yet, because even though we have these metrics that already indicate that we're very close, we'll see that when it comes to the voting status, there's 2 out of the 3 left to actually allow for this to fully happen, maybe, arguably, in my opinion, because if we take a look at it, when it comes to delegated representatives, this one has already passed. The threshold was 60%. Clearly, we're seeing 66.57% here. That one's good to go. But when it comes to SPO and CC, now when it comes to SPO, basically, it's like the pool operators, and CC is the Constitutional Committee. If we take a look at it, for the SPOs, it's 43.75%, but 51% is needed. So this is very close as of right now. And when it comes to the Constitutional Committee, it says 1 constitutional, 6 yet to vote. However, this requires 5 yes votes for the action to be deemed constitutional. So far, there's 1 that has voted yes, but the other 6 still need to vote. But again, there needs to be 5 yes votes for this. But again, if we take a look at it based off the other statistics, we're kind of close, which is why, again, I did say that hypothetically, we could very well be one step closer to the Van Rossum hard fork. There's basically a lot of progress that's being made as of right now. Why does this matter? Because again, just to kind of emphasize how a lot of enterprises out there nowadays, they care about security. The Van Rossum hard fork is exactly meant to allow for Cardano to have better security. So why is that a bad thing? I think if anything, it's actually a very fantastic thing. It's actually going to bring smart contract improvements, which is a big deal, in my opinion, because this is going to improve the performance and efficiency for smart contracts and applications. So this is pretty fantastic, in my opinion. Not to mention, it's going to bring node-level security enhancements. And ultimately speaking, what this update is going to do is that it's going to lay the groundwork for an even bigger upgrade for Cardano moving forward. Let me explain why. Because it's actually preparing Cardano for another future upgrade that will bring something called Leos. And keep in mind, I've made a video on Leos before, but Leos is meant to bring amazing scalability towards Cardano. Not that it really needs any more scalability, some people may arguably say, but this is just going to make things a whole lot better. So when people like to say, oh, Cardano can't really compete, that's actually not true. I mean, they're already very competitive as of right now, but seeing the Van Rossum hard fork and seeing how that sets up Cardano for another upgrade that could very well bring something called Leos, which is Cardano's big scalability solution, so to speak, that's going to allow for Cardano to just even become more competitive moving forward and just bring more features when it comes to Cardano. So this is very important, in my opinion. When will it exactly happen? We don't know as of right now, but apparently we're quite close. Not to mention as well, ADA recovering almost 5% in the past 24 hours, could it have had anything to do with this recent update of the Van Rossum hard fork? I think so, because this is a much anticipated thing when it comes to Cardano. A lot of people are looking forward to this. So it's no joke. Now, some people may be thinking, well, why is it even called the Van Rossum hard fork? Well, it's because it's actually named in honor of Max Van Rossum, who was a very prominent figure in the Cardano community. However, unfortunately, he is no longer with us today. So this was named in honor of Max Van Rossum. And I think moments like this do showcase that the Cardano community does value its prominent members. So this is pretty fantastic. And when I take a look at it as well, ADA as of right now, people like to say, well, if this Van Rossum hard fork is so anticipated, why isn't ADA at around 30 cents or something like that? Well, it's because the market overall isn't doing the best. Cardano being ranked 14th currently, being one of the biggest layer one blockchains out there, and being ranked 14th, I mean in terms of market cap in regard to this space, in terms of ADA, its native token, it's ranked 14th. Again, being that massive, it's not simply going to be able to go on an independent rally of its own just because of an update or a planned update or anything like that. It's going to be dependent on a bigger change in market sentiment just because it's a pretty large project to begin with. It's not a microcap. But I don't mind though, because I think that the Van Rossum hard fork could bring a lot of benefits to something like Cardano. It's not going to instantly make Cardano just the best layer one blockchain, not necessarily. What that does is that it's going to make it better for enterprises to maybe, let's say, adopt Cardano, and it's going to make it better in terms of an environment for developers that want to build on Cardano. This is pretty massive. And again, it does lay down the groundwork for something called Leos moving forward, which is even more anticipated than this. So if people are very looking forward to, I should say, for something like Leos, then the Van Rossum hard fork is crucial because it's going to set it up for that. It's going to lay down the groundwork for something like that. It's like, let's say someone wants to build a building, the foundation has to be built first. The Van Rossum hard fork is kind of like the foundation. The building is like Leos, basically. But of course, they're not going to stop at Leos. There's going to be more, but the most anticipated thing as of right now is Leos, but then that's going to be really dependent on the Van Rossum hard fork. So this is a pretty big deal, I think, when it comes to Cardano. I get it. It's a little bit boring saying all this type of stuff, maybe some people might arguably say, but it's quite important in my opinion, because if I just ignore the price charts for a second, this is actually a pretty big deal. I mean, imagine if all of this was going down right now, like let's say being this close to the Van Rossum hard fork, but let's say it happened in 2024 or at a certain point in 2025, it would be considered a way bigger deal. But as of right now, just because the market isn't doing the best, a lot of people like to ignore this. But some still do care apparently because ADA has recovered almost 5% in the past 24 hours. But I'm saying the overall market sentiment hasn't been the best. But sometimes I like to put myself in a different frame of mind. When I take a look at news, when I take a look at updates when it comes to Cardano, I think to myself, would this be a big deal? Would this be a big thing if, let's say, the market was doing better? And if the answer is yes, then automatically I would consider it to be a good update or a good news regardless of the price chart. So the price charts don't control my emotions in terms of the way I take a look at news or updates when it comes to Cardano. I stay more neutral when it comes to how I interpret the news and the updates when it comes to Cardano, because I have to take a look at it for what it is, not being affected by just the way I view the price charts. But nonetheless though, ADA as of right now being over 5 times lower than a certain point last year, because last year we saw it at a certain point hover at around $1. So we're still over 5 times lower than that. The thing is this, do I mind? No, because I don't mind the dip. I get it. It may sound a little bit silly. Some people like to say, well, what happens if this goes down or whatever, but I'm only dollar cost averaging once a month. I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but that way, you know, if let's say I'm dollar cost averaging at a certain point, it goes down a little bit lower. Okay, maybe I dollar cost average at that point next month, and then the next month, maybe it's somewhere in between. That way it just kind of evens itself out. All I'm doing is I'm just holding and waiting, and that's really about it. People like to tell me that Cardano is cooked as a layer one blockchain, it's not innovating, but I disagree with that. I'd like to point to the Van Rossum hard fork and how that maybe could become a reality, hopefully hypothetically soon, and also on top of that, how it's even laying down the groundwork for something called Leos potentially moving forward. So sometimes people don't take this into consideration, but if I take a look at Cardano a little bit deeper, this is what I'm seeing. It's not a bad layer one blockchain from what I can see, but if it's still having things done to try to improve it, it's such a big thumbs up for me. And quite evidently, we're seeing some massive players out there care about Cardano. Take a look at Cardano's recent partnership with the Brazilian Olympic Committee, which had an aspect of AI, and it was a 3-year roadmap, which is pretty impressive. Not to mention as well, Cardano, they've done things with Petrobras, literally the largest company in Brazil. And also on top of that, Cardano is a layer one blockchain that has affected, supposedly, over 10,000 farms as of late. I saw a recent statistic regarding that, showcasing how Cardano was even making an impact in the world of agriculture. So we gotta think about that sometimes. However, I'm not telling anyone to do anything. This has been a pretty quick update highlighting how we could very well just be one step closer to seeing that Van Rossum hard fork when it comes to Cardano. However, I want to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a very fantastic day. It's been Lee the Captain. I'm out. Peace. Bye.